What's next for Ohio's Haitian refugees? Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. An estimated 30,000 Haitian refugees live in the Columbus Springfield area under temporary protected status. It allows them to live in the U.S. because their home country is too dangerous. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that President Trump can end that status for Haitians as well as Syrians. Revocation of the status would ban them from working legally in the U.S. and make them subject to deportation. Governor DeWine, who is personally close to the Haitian community, said ending TPS is a mistake, but added there is little he can do. Joe Mas, this ruling does not mean that Haitian refugees living in Columbus and in Springfield will immediately have to leave or will get immediately detained, right?
Yes and no. They immediately have the obligation to leave, but that doesn't mean that that is going to happen. And to answer the second part of the question as to whether there is going to be any type of official move, as we saw early on in Chicago and New York and in Minneapolis, probably politics will interfere in that, and also the fact that we have a new administrator of the ICE program. So I doubt that that will happen with the degree of energy and cruelty that we saw at the beginning.
Bob, there's thousands, tens of thousands of Haitian refugees here. They've been working in the Springfield area, filling jobs, Columbus area as well. Is it fair to make them leave, given that Haiti is still in really bad shape?
Well, Mike, we have a lot of countries in this world that are awful, and, people want to come to the United States to understand that. This is a temporary, protective status. It's just temporary. It's not permanent, and it's under the purview of the executive, the President of the United States. It is what it is. I mean, you can change the law. I mean, you can try to change the law and try to, give these people permanent status when they apply for asylum and not a temporary. But the law is the law, and the courts basically said this is something that the president decides. He grants it. He decides when that temporary period of time is over, and President Trump's done that.
So, Jake, what is the thinking? Are we going to see the roundups that we saw in Chicago and Minneapolis this winter?
I don't know. I can't predict the future here. I suspect that, there, like Joe said, there will be some political considerations here, but I think that there's going to be a big humanitarian problem. I mean, Haiti's a failed state. Haiti, there are assassinations, gangs run much of the country. I believe we don't fly planes there because of gunfire planes have been taking. So I don't know how... I don't know what you do with these people just as a matter of good conscience. I'd assume if there's a deportation campaign, you'd have to look at third-party countries that would be willing to take them. So I can't predict the politics or the actual enforcement, but there's a very serious humanitarian crisis on the left.
Jesse, Governor DeWine, long history with Haiti. He has supported schools there in memory of his daughter. He's been to Haiti many times, maybe not recently, but many times over the years. Special affinity to Springfield in that area. What is he doing to try to interfere or support the Haitian community in this case?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is going to be decided at the federal level. He's making the campaign based off his personal experience and personal knowledge of these people, both in actual Haiti, from visiting there, from the Becky DeWine School, and also just from working with people in Springfield, both Haitian immigrants, but also businesses. A lot of these businesses that employ individuals are no longer legally going to be able to do so. And so what does that mean for them by way of staffing? But also, if they continue to employ these people, they could face penalties as well.
Mike, what I anticipate, though, is that perhaps some of the more conservative, well, let me use a different word, some of the more Trump-aligned legislators will then pressure the governor into having the state police assist in the identification, if not the direct deportation, as it's happened in Florida, by the way. And then, under those circumstances, then the governor may very well take a stand, and I anticipate that he would under those extreme circumstances, but that has not happened yet.
Up to the point where there are bad places around the world. The State Department's advisory for Haiti for Americans is do not travel there.
Yeah.
It's the highest, worst level. President Trump is allowing refugees in from South Africa. They're at level 2, which is the second highest. It's basically use caution when traveling there. That's the same as Great Britain, Spain, and France right now. Is there a disconnect there? He's allowing refugees in from South Africa, but Haiti, y'all go back.
Well, I mean, he's bringing them in from other countries as well, too, not just South Africa. But that's the one everybody likes to point to because they try to make it look like it's a racist thing, which it isn't. What we're talking about is temporary protected status. I don't think he's given permanent status to anybody outside of Haiti. So I don't think he's just saying, oh, well, only the Haitians and the Syrians get temporary, everybody else gets permanent. It's a system that's been in place, and he's using it the way it's supposed to be used. You give them temporary status. And so that's what he's done.
He is giving gift bags to the folks who come in too. So I mean, there's a different standard there between the two countries.
Yeah, and the temporary status, it's not just the clock that runs out, but it's directly tied to the conditions in that given country. And if the conditions in that given country, as you have said, have not improved, then the humane thing to do is to continue that status until such time as something happens and open the door for a more expanded status, such as permanent legal resident and so on.
Jesse, I'm curious. Well, in the state level, this is the state. They can maybe help with law enforcement, local law enforcement, state law enforcement. But in the Senate race, John Husted, it's going to be an issue in this race between him and Sherrod Brown.
Yeah, his statement was interesting. It was very much like, I support the rule of law. He was not really going hard one way or the other on this. He didn't want to run probably afoul of either Trump or Mike DeWine, who was his governor when he was lieutenant governor. So his statement was pretty, I guess, down the middle.
Yeah. All right. Well, go ahead, Bob.
Well, the politics of this, I mean, you can go back to the 2024 presidential election. This was a big, big issue, which was strange in that we don't have presidential campaigns where Ohio has something going on that becomes an issue in the presidential race. So this is a big issue. Here in Ohio, obviously Trump did much better. He won Clark County, and the first time ever, he won the city of Springfield. So, I mean, politically, I don't know whether it hurts or whether it would help.
But let's not forget that that was based on a complete outright lie about eating dogs and cats. They're eating your pets.
Oh, I think the memes that they came up with immediately
it was
disproved. I mean,
extraordinary.
But
Trump said it at a debate that they're eating the dogs and the cats.
Yeah, but they were making fun of him afterwards, and everybody knew that was not true. No, I mean, it's the people there that make these decisions. They voted the way they voted. Now, you may not like the way they voted, but that's what the people there did.
So, Mike, this is a question. We have like 30 seconds left. So, why hasn't this been solved? I mean, immigration has been a problem for 25 years. We had a close to came.
Mike, you're really asking that question. I thought you were going to say that for Social Security.
That was
that's coming up. Yeah.
That was the Kennedy-McCain or McCain-Kennedy Act back in 1996.
Yeah, when Mickey Cantor lost his seat because they came up with an immigration reform thing and the Republicans didn't like it.
A lot of other things happen as a consequence, yeah.
So it's just, it goes on, but no solution in sight yet, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, before it rushed off to summer recess, Ohio lawmakers passed a bill that would have changed how Ohioans vote by mail. It would have required mail-in voters submit some form of photo ID. They would have to copy their ID, send it in the mail, or upload it through a website. Critics blasted the new rules as unnecessary, and they claimed it would keep some voters from casting ballots. Governor DeWine agreed. This week, he vetoed that bill. He said it would not discourage fraud and would pose a significant added burden on Ohioans who vote by mail. Jack Zuckerman, first to the bill that was proposed. 1 million people voted by mail in the last election in 24 here in Ohio. It seemed like this was impossible to comply with and impossible to administer, or close to impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was confusing. It sets up a new slate of rules for voting by mail that doesn't take effect until after this current election. But in this current election, there's another semi-related voter ID constitutional amendment on the ballot. This is endlessly confusing stuff for a problem that it's guarding against a problem that has not been shown to exist. There has not been any sort of widespread or even relatively widespread problem of vote by mail misidentification. So there's no problem being solved by the bill that confuses here.
This was consistent with what Mike DeWine has said, Jesse. He thinks, as of right now, the voting system here is pretty good. We don't need to change it, I think. And he's stuck with that.
Yeah, the governor said a few years ago that he really didn't want to be signing too many more voting bills. He did sign one voting bill a little bit under the threat of potential lawsuits or problems with the federal system. That was making sure that the ballots arrived by Election Day versus afterward. But this particular measure wasn't something being pushed from D.C. It really was part of a compromise to pass that constitutional amendment that Jake referenced, and it was a way to kind of like generate support for this other measure.
Bob, I mean, the cases of fraud are minuscule.
I know.
I
always hear that.
Why do they keep changing, trying to make it tougher and prevent fraud that really is not occurring?
Well, because they feel that there's an issue out there that's got to be addressed. Now, every time they do pass something, and it happened when they, passed the law that said you had to show it at, polling places. Oh my gosh, you're going to be shutting down our election system. People won't be able to vote. Happened in Georgia when they changed theirs. They said, oh my gosh, it's going to keep people from voting. Guess what? People are voting more than ever. So these things that we always talk about is going to somehow stop people from voting when they're actually implemented. They never stop people from voting.
That's just not true.
What?
That's just not true. More absentee ballots than ever since 2023 voting changes in Ohio have led to provisional ballots not being cured, not being ultimately counted in ballots.
Because of photo ID, they don't show it.
No.
The photo, they don't have to show it on an absentee ballot.
I'm
They're
talking
not
about
affected.
people who go up to vote in person. When Republicans changed our voter laws in 2023, we've had a marked increase in people who are coming in to vote, not meeting the new requirements, and their votes are not being counted.
Well, I mean, so we have less people voting now than we did prior to photo ID. No, we don't. We have more.
Well,
But,
go ahead, Jake.
but I think the question is, and I think what Jake is suggesting, is that within the subset of the individuals that vote absentee, that we've had a larger number of the absentee ballots being rejected. Whether more people, whether we, Democrats or you, Republicans, get more people to come out or population's bigger or whatever, that's another story. But I do agree with the governor's logic, and that is exactly what are you going to do with a photo ID in a mail-in ballot, because you can't compare it. You can't put it next to the individual and compare it. You could, for example, why not use the number on your driver's license? Or
I think what the Secretary of
photo
State,
ID.
though, is working towards is doing a system where you can vote online, where you upload it online and just vote absentee via online.
And I predict, it's maybe you are predicting right now that down the road, 10 years, 20 years after I'm gone, that we will have everything done in that fashion.
Could this have backfired, Bob, on Republicans? I looked at Butler County, very Republican county, voted for Donald Trump by 27 points 2 years ago. I looked at the number of who took out absentee ballots. It was basically half Republican, half Democrat, and the rest unaffiliated or
Oh,
libertarian.
yeah, and I think statewide we had more Republicans. And when you look at now our voting demographics that have taken place over the last 10 years or so, it's shown that the people that are less frequent voters are more Republican voters. So this whole thing of, Republicans are trying to keep people from voting, I mean, that's not true. Politically, we're hurt by this. Politically, the more fringe people that we don't allow to vote because we make it harder will mean less Republican votes. I mean, they looked at the people that
So why do
didn't.
they keep passing these bills then?
Because they feel that there's a problem. Now, you talk about all the provisionals that, you have people that aren't getting allowed to vote. Well, should they have been voting in the first place? I mean, is our photo ID system catching a problem that nobody knew about, didn't exist? I mean, why are they not allowed to vote? Because they can't provide
I think there's
a photo ID?
I think there's another answer to what Bob is pondering on, is that there must be a problem that they're trying to address. I disagree. I think this has become a meme. It's become an issue only because Donald Trump thinks it's an issue.
All right, we'll move on to our next topic. Last week, Governor DeWine, when announcing his opposition to the death penalty, was asked if he would consider commuting the sentences of death row inmates. Here's that exchange.
There are some opponents of the death penalty who are calling on you in your final months hours. Can you talk about what thoughts you've had about that?
No. I'm going to talk today about the reasoning behind what I wrote and what I just read.
Well, it turns out that about 3 weeks earlier, he had commuted the sentence of a death row inmate. There was no public announcement. It was not until reporting from the Marshall Project this week that we learned that on May 27th, Governor DeWine took murderer Gregory Lott off death row. He will now spend the rest of his life in prison with no chance for parole. Lott, who has been on death row for 4 decades, has severe intellectual disabilities. The state parole board recommended clemency for him 6 years ago. Jesse Balmert, has the governor explained why he took him off death row yet?
You know, I'm not sure if the Marshall Project got to the bottom of that, but I think leaning into the parole board had recommended it. Even the family of the victim in this particular case had asked for mercy for Mr. Lott, and just the intellectual disabilities were certainly a factor. It could provide a bit of a roadmap that if Mike DeWine were to do more commutations, would they look like this?
So, Bob, why not, when he was asked the question, this guy was example number one of why Mike DeWine opposed the death penalty.
Would have been a good thing to show.
He's
as
been
an
on
example,
death row
yeah.
for 4 decades.
Yeah.
The family didn't oppose
Yeah.
him getting off death row.
Yeah.
Intellectual disabilities, the parole board offered him clemency.
Yeah.
He could have said, here's an example of why I now oppose
Yeah.
him. Why didn't he?
I can't answer that question, Mike. I can't get into Mike DeWine's head.
I know. I'm not asking you to get into his head, but I'm just curious.
I disagree with the governor too many times. I don't disagree with him on this. I mean, I totally agree with him on this. He's right to life. I'm right to life. You can't be right to life and then somehow be for the death penalty. It'd be like being for abortion but against the death penalty. You got to have a consistency there.
Well, no,
so
no, right
I
to life, Bob,
appreciate
says
that.
they have the qualifier of innocent life. That's how they do it now. The right to life official policy is we oppose abortion, but not
I get
the death
that,
penalty.
but it's not. Okay, and I think the governor should have done that. The death penalty is not effective for the very thing you just said, 4 decades. I mean, how can you use the death penalty as some deterrent when the person thinks I'm going to be in jail for decades?
You know, and Bob is absolutely correct. I agree with him, and I agree with the governor on this. But just because, I mean, Right to Life is a political organization, okay? It's not necessarily solely an ethical or a moral one. But I'm drawing the same position that the Catholic Church has drawn, that they are, yes, they're in favor of right to life, but they're also in favor of the dignity of humans, including refugees, and they're in favor of eliminating the death penalty, as has been the case with the last 3 popes that we have. And I think that that's the position that Bob and I are taking. So
as far as offering clemency down the road, he's got 200 days left in his term. There's a chance there's 100. I went on last week on the Department of Corrections website, and there were 109 names on death row. I went this week, and the first time I checked, there were 107 names. I said, whoa, 2 are gone. I checked 10 minutes later, there were 106 names. So I asked the Department of Corrections what's going on. They quickly got back to me. One was Gregory Lott, the man who was commuted. Another man died of natural causes, and another man had his sentence reduced by a court in Cleveland, I believe. So is that what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to go in there every week and count the names and see who's been commuted?
Let me shed some light on this, because there's an explanation here for what the governor did. What the governor said was, so the Supreme Court has changed the standard for how courts evaluate whether you can use the death penalty on someone with intellectual disabilities. Yeah. After those rulings came down, the courts had already churned him through the system when that ruling came in. So the legal standard had changed to such a way that would render him ineligible for the death penalty, but the courts had already spoken by that point. That's where Mike DeWine stepped in. You could argue that that's a little bit different than a philosophical objection to the death penalty. So to just make the governor's case.
We get a press release about every ribbon cutting, but not about him commuting the sentence of a man who committed a horrific crime.
I did my best to the governor.
Transparency is, I don't know, if he'd taken this stand,
there was no political benefit to it.
I can add that this has been a parlor game among Columbus reporters, is when is the governor going to make his big announcement about the death penalty. I expect there was a lot of pageantry behind this, and then there was a legal timeline, and those things intersected in a most unfortunate way.
And I think the governor didn't want to go out of his way to get the legislature upset. You know, I mean, there's still a lot of proponents in the legislature of the death penalty, and I don't think he, at this point in time, he wants to take on a fight with it.
All right, well, we have to solve Social Security. Other than being each state's senior U.S. Senator, Bernie Moreno and Elizabeth Warren do not share much in common. But this week, they teamed up to propose a fix for Social Security's looming funding crisis. Experts predict the Social Security Trust Fund, basically its savings account, will run out of money in 6 years. If that happens, benefits would have to be cut significantly. Moreno and Warren say they have a solution: increase Social Security taxes on higher income earners. Right now, Social Security taxes are capped. People don't have to pay any Social Security taxes on income above $185,000. Experts say lifting that cap and imposing Social Security taxes on upper income earners could delay the trust fund insolvency by 30 years. Bob Clegg, you are a political ad man. This writes itself. Bernie Moreno teams up with woke Massachusetts liberal to raise your taxes.
No, it's Bernie Moreno looking out for our vulnerable senior citizens. That's what it is.
But joking aside, it's a pretty bold move on his part.
It is, and it shows you how much he does care, obviously, about seniors and making sure that that money that so many seniors depend on is going to be there. I think I don't know why we're still talking about this, why it hasn't been solved, but I think in the end, what we're going to, the wealthier individuals are going to be hit one way or the other, and maybe both ways. It's either going to be higher, they're going to take off that cap, or they're going to take the cap off only so far and then maybe do means testing so that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates don't receive Social Security.
Bob, you're not going to believe this.
What?
1968. I'm a senior in high school. And we were talking, must have been civics class or business class. And the teacher was saying, your generation, being as large as it is going to make some demands on the society and on Social Security. This topic came up in 1968, the cap, which is, what is it?
It's 185
now.
It's gone up.
500, by the way. 185, 500.
In 1937, when this was passed, it was $3,000.
And the only thing that we're talking about, by the way, is whether the 6% or whatever should continue beyond that. It seems to me like a no-brainer that should be happening, and it isn't. What kind of a break is that?
Jesse, Bernie Moreno's been pretty conservative and pretty tightly aligned with Donald Trump and attacking liberals, but this kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. This op-ed he wrote in the New York Times.
Yeah, it's an unlikely partnership, I would say, particularly Elizabeth Warren, who's pretty well known on the left. But to the points that we've been making, this really wouldn't affect about 94% of people. It's like about 6% of people who would be paying this increased amount of money, and so perhaps it's not that big of a risk.
Is this, does it have traction, do you think, Jake?
Politically, yes. In terms of, am I expecting this to happen anytime soon? No. But I will add that there was a time when it was true that Elizabeth Warren was just a Republican attorney living in Oklahoma. So maybe this isn't as strange as it looks on its face.
But if you look at the comments in the New York Times after the op-ed that they both wrote jointly, and there's still a lot of opposition to any tax increase at all, Bob.
Yeah, but the question is, how do you save Social Security? And you're right, it's not going to get fixed right now, but by 2032, 2033, they're going to fix it. And it's better to start tackling it now so that we're not in the crisis mode.
There's one reason why it'll get fixed, because if they don't, they'll all lose their jobs. Seriously, if they don't fix it,
to lose their jobs.
And it goes broke, they'll get it done. It may be at the last minute.
Every single incumbent that's in office.
Yeah. Let's get to our off-the-record parting shots. Joe Mas, you're up first.
Mike, if I go back to the TPS thing, this is a problem not only because of what's happening with the Haitians and a million other, by the way, because the number is really high, but the logic of the decision by Supreme Court Justice Alito troubles me, because basically he says that the court should not second-guess the chief executive, suggesting that the office of the president has no limits. And that, my friends, is a problem, not only because of this president, but because of the next Democratic president.
Bob.
Legislature this month finally put money in a fund they created 5 years ago to help first responders with PTSD and other mental health issues. And they finally put in $40 million. They should have done that 5 years ago, but they didn't.
All right, Jake.
The Ohio Power Siting Board rejected Sloopy Solar this week, which just goes to show you that you cannot name your project after a beloved Ohio figure and expect that to carry and save the day.
Nice try, though.
It was a good try.
Jesse.
You stole my off-the-record comment about the PTSI. It's really interesting bill. No. I would say DeWine issued another veto this week that was about sub-metering, these kind of third-party utilities, and that was a really interesting decision as well. It just kind of flew under the radar of voter ID.
Consumer advocates applauded the governor for that veto. My off-the-record comment is bittersweet. This week, we say goodbye to a Columbus on the Record original. Our studio manager, Paul Peliquin, retires after 27 years as an employee. He was a volunteer for this place for 13 years before that. He's been with this show from the start. He crafted our very first table out of fine plywood. He has guided many employees and students throughout the years. He is the quintessential team player. We had to tell him to stop helping us, but we will miss him greatly, and we wish him well in his retirement. Paul, good luck. We'll miss you. Thanks for everything. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, the WOSU News YouTube page. You can watch us there. Also, the PBS app and WOSU.org. For our crew and panel and for Paul, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.